Well, good morning and congratulations. We're finishing Genesis today. And we're actually going to move from Genesis to Galatians for next week and really begin to see some of the huge connections between the Old Testament and the New Testament. But before we get there, we've got to look at Genesis chapter 50. And today is our last day with Joseph. And this really is that time where Joseph has a choice. He can either give his brothers what they deserve, or he can give his brothers grace. I think anytime somebody wrongs you, you really do have those two choices, don't you? You can either give them what they deserve, or you can give them grace. Always remind yourself that God has called you to give others what He has given you, and that is grace and mercy, even in the midst of transgression. Well, when the time comes for Him to either forgive or really to destroy, here's what He says to His brothers. He says, do not fear. Am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. And then He comforted them and He spoke kindly to them. He acknowledges the reality that, you meant to harm me. You meant to destroy me. You meant to hurt me. But then He says something that I don't want you to miss today. He said, but God meant it for good. You and I need to learn to look for God's hand in the midst of all of our situations and say, God, I know that they mean this for evil, but what are you seeking to accomplish in my life? He had a choice right now. Am I going to forgive them, or am I going to condemn and destroy them? You remember there was a time in Peter's life when he came to Jesus and he said, Jesus, how many times must I forgive those who offend me and sin against me? Up to 7 times? And Jesus said, no, 70 times 7. Now you can do the math and you can say, well, so when somebody wrongs me up to 490 times, then I can get them back. But that's really not what Jesus was saying. What Jesus was saying was that you and I should always be willing to forgive other people. Why? Because the book of Ephesians says we're to forgive other people just as we have been forgiven. Let me ask you this question. As a child of God, at what point does God stop forgiving you? The answer is never. When Christ was on the cross, He said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And you may say, yeah, but that was Jesus. He had a capacity to forgive that I don't. But in the book of Acts, when Stephen was being stoned to death, Stephen says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Let me encourage you today. Others are going to wrong you. Others are going to deceive you. Others are going to hurt you. But rather than retaliate and give them what they deserve, ask God to forgive them through you, just as He has forgiven you.